Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new real-life car review. In this episode I'm driving the updated Kia Picanto. The Kia Picanto is currently in its third model generation. It's been on sale for 8 years and now it receives its second large facelift. This car is one of the top selling cars in the Netherlands. It's always been in the top 5 of car sales and most of the time it was even on the #1 position. So the question is, what makes this car so popular and are the updates enough to keep this car in the top of the sale list? Well, we'll find out in this real life car review, and I want to start off by doing a review of the styling changes to the exterior. There are also changes to the interior, but those are actually quite minor. So let's first have a look at the new front end of the Kia Picanto. Now the front end is completely new and looks like nothing of the pre-update version. Kia redesigned the headlights so that they are more in line with the Kia EV models and also the K models, which we don't get over here. We still have the Kia Sedan, so it's really curious to see if we'll get the K4 over here. I think it's quite an interesting car, but anyway, there is a very vertical touch, very vertical lines to the new front end. You have LED headlights from the second trim grade. The base model gets halogen or incandescent headlights, but all of the other models get the new LED headlights. There are 3 projectors in here. The upper 2 are the low beams and the lower one is the high beam projector. Very interesting daytime running light design that we see in the EV models too, with a line going here onto the side and then a line going down. There are the indicators, so they are separate from the daytime running light. And in this version, this is the top of the range trim level, you also get this connecting light strip that's illuminated when a headlights run. If you only run the daytime running lights, this one is off. I think this is a little bit over the top, and if you don't like it, you should opt for a trim grade other than the top trim level. Anyway, I think it's a very interesting design. Also new are these 16-inch wheels, which are only available on the top trim level. Its design is very reminiscent of what we see on the newer Kia models, especially the EV models. I have something to say about this wheel size. These are 16-inch wheels, but I'll keep that for the drive segment. But anyway, the base model comes with 14-inch steel wheels. The next trim grade comes with 14-inch alloy wheels, and the third trim grade comes with the 15-inch wheels, and only the top spec model, the top trim level, comes with those 16-inch wheels. The redesign of the tail isn't as drastic as on the front, but there's also a lot of interesting things going on here. We see the light design that we see in a lot of other new Kia models. What's new is this section underneath the rear window with the LED lights in here, so these are the tail lights. The bumper is completely redesigned, and the switch to open the trunk, the micro switch, is over here. You have the backup camera here, and there's a little micro switch. I had to look for it, I didn't find it right away. So while we're at here, let's have a quick peek in the cargo area. I have a standard size shopping crate in here, and to show you how limited the cargo space is, it's 125 liters with the rear seat up. If you want to get it in and out, it's a bit tricky. It is quite deep, though this is quite a big step. That gives you a lot of space, but it's not ideal to get groceries in this car. You either have to have the partial shelf out or partially fold down the rear seat. The rear seat has a 60-40 split, and with it folded down you end up with a very decent cargo capacity of 1010 liters. I will say this a lot in this video. My daily driver is a Hyundai i10, which is the technical twin of this car. It has the exact same cargo space, and it's just not ideal as a grocery getter. It has a very practical shape, I must say. Anyway, let's hop over to the front and have a peek under the hood. So, what drives the all-new Kia Picanto? Well, when it comes to engines, there is not a lot of good news. It's not all negative too, but the important takeaway is that we only have one engine option left, which is this 1-liter naturally aspirated engine. And they made it Euro 6e emissions compliant, and they didn't change any internals of the engine. They did it mostly by software programming, and as a result of that, the already low engine output of 67 horsepower has now sunk to 63 horsepower, so we lost 4 horsepower in the process. As said, my daily driver is the technical twin of this car with the exact same drivetrain, so engine and transmission. Yeah, I could immediately tell the difference. This feels less powerful. The wheels have also something to do with that, because the larger wheel size, you have less effective torque at the wheels, so the car is a bit quicker with smaller wheels. But other than that, I can really tell this engine has less horsepower, and the power band is a little bit narrower. You really have to keep this engine above 1600 RPM when you're driving in gear, and preferably above the 2000 RPM. The power band in my car is somewhere in between 2500 to 4000 RPM. The car always wants to pull. It's not fast, but it goes. But it's much less the case after the update of the engine, so that's not all good news. But on a positive note, I come to know these engines is very reliable. Mine is at 270,000 kilometers and still going strong. Very low maintenance cost, great fuel economy. It's quite a quiet engine. It's very little vibrations, and what's important to note is that these engines don't have a balancing shaft. The crankshaft is completely balanced by its counterweight, does it very well, but a side effect of that is that you have a lot of rotational mass, and especially on upshifts there's a lot of rev hang, because there's quite a lot of weight circling around in the crankcase. Engine has two cam faces, both on the intake and exhaust, port injection, so you don't have any problems with carbon buildup in the inlet trajectory. Hyundai and Kia do recommend 20,000 kilometer oil changes, but if you're smart, like I've always done, you lower that to maximum 15,000 kilometers, and I personally stick to 12,500 kilometers. The transmission, well, it's a 5-speed manual transmission, and there is only one option for a 4-speed automatic transmission, which will cost you 2,000 euros extras. It's very tried and true technology, as I always like to call it. I've come to know these engines, as said, as very reliable, very low maintenance cost, and they are not powerful, but they do get the job done. Anyway, let's have a peek in the interior. There are not many changes done to the interior of the Picanto. The big change is the digital gauge cluster, but other than that everything remains unchanged. Actually, since this car was first introduced, they have good seats. I wish they were tilted upwards a little bit more, but they do have height adjustment, and overall, it's a basic dashboard design, but all the luxury is there. And I will say this, that from the base model on, the safety features of the car are very good. With the update, we now also have a driver attention monitor and the overspeed warning, and that is very easy to switch off. So let me get the camera and show you around. So first off, well, you can see it straight away, and that's something I noticed, that there is a lot of glare in this panel, especially this time of year. It's early March right now, when you have the sun coming in from the side window. There is a lot of glare, and I've had it happen a couple of times already that I couldn't read the speed of the car. Now let me power it up. What's new here, so actually only the center section of the screen of this display is an actual display. It's a TFT screen, and the speedometer and the tachometer over there are only 7-segment digit displays. They're very straightforward, and you have these surrounds along here. Oh, that's me activating the indicator, and you get more of them when the revs rise. So with 2000 RPM, the second surround comes on, 3000 RPM, the third comes on, and so on and so forth. So let's have a quick look at the steering wheel. Design is unchanged. The important thing to note here is that we have this button for the lane trace assist and the lane keep assist. If you push it in and you hold it down, then you activate or deactivate, you can see it right there, the lane departure warning. And if you push it shortly, you get that little steering wheel. Let me zoom in. That little steering wheel over there, and that is the lane center assist, so that's actually active steering. Over here you have the well-known Hyundai Kia infotainment system, and to switch off the overspeed warning you go to setup and then to vehicle, and the first thing that comes up on top is the speed limit, and up for the lower one, and then it switches off. This car is also fitted with blind spot monitoring, and I also have that put out because it thinks it's a Kia Telluride or an EV9 when it's already safe to go back to your lane, and you put on the indicator, that little triangle in the mirror starting to blink, and you get an audio warning. It's a little overcautious, I must say. Now here we have the climate control. There's a little negative with that, and that's I cannot read this display with my sunglasses on. And here are the other buttons. It's still true to the original design, it's exactly the same, so we have physical buttons. And the brochure said it should have the wireless charger for a phone, but it doesn't have that, so I'm not sure what's going on there. I have to ask Kia PR. And in this top of the range trim level you also get a heated steering wheel, and both front seats are heated in 2 steps, which I think is a real nice option. And this option you can have on the 3rd trim grade. So you have base models, 2nd trim grade, 3rd trim grade, and then the GT line, the top trim grade. Nice gearbox, shifts very nice. So that's the news for the front passengers. Let's also have a quick peek at the rear passenger space, because there's an interesting fact about this car. It may be a small car, but getting in and out is quite easy. Now I have the driver's seat in my driving position. I must say the seating position is very nice, and that's mainly down to the fact that the seat is quite high up in relation to the car floor. So I have a lot of support in my upper legs, and with the headrest up I do have a nice seating position over here. I'm 1.73 meters, so I'm not the tallest, also not the shortest, but for me this is a comfy seating position. As you may expect, there is not a lot of luxury over here. This is a black interior. The headliner and the pillar upholstery is white, by the way. That brightens up the interior quite a bit, but it's very basic. I do have a USB-C charger over here, but there is no armrest. Now comes the interesting fact. The Kia Picanto and its technical twin, the Hyundai i10, are standard available as a 4-seater car. If you want a 5-seater car, so with 3 seat belts on the rear seat, you have to pay 800 euros, and then you'll have a 5-seater. But trust me, if you have 3 passengers on the rear seat, on the regular, you'd better opt for a larger car. So not spend your money on a new Picanto, but I would recommend going for Kia Stonic or even a Kia Ceed. That's second hand. This is not ideal for 3 passengers on the rear, and I think the majority of the cars is sold as a 4-seater. Just save your 800 euros over there. But important takeaway for the rear passenger space is that it has a real good seating positions. It's also nice that I can stow my feet under the driver's seat. Now let's quickly do the window test. There's quite large windows, I must say, so even for smaller children this is a nice place to be. It's a good place to be. There's a lot of glass and there's good view towards the outside. But anyway, I think it's time to go on a drive. Now before I drive off, I want to point out one thing, and that's the elephant in the room. This is the low power engine option, and it's the only engine option available. Now keep in mind that this car was mainly intended as a city car and does a lot of stop and go traffic in that situation. So for a manual transmission it's really important to have a well calibrated clutch and throttle pedal to get going from a standstill, which will do a lot in city traffic. And that's the one thing that Kia hasn't got figured out, because you can feel the clutch engage, just a little bit of throttle, and it's so easy to get going from a standstill, even with this low power output engine that of course has little torque at idle. So anyway, that's good. Now immediately In this corner I come to my first talking point, and that's the gear ratios. I'm in third gear right now. This is a tight left hand turn and I really have to downshift to second gear a lot. The spacing of these gearboxes, because the same goes for the Hyundai i10, is a bit odd, especially for second and third gear. If you have a slow corner or a roundabout or a speed bump, oftentimes third gear is too low. It's too low, and then you have to downshift to second gear, and second gear in itself is a bit too short. So that is not ideal, and that's something that you have to know when you go drive this car or when you buy this car. Said my daily driver is the technical twin. It has the exact same problem. You get used to it, but that's the one thing that I really would like to change with this drivetrain option. I can immediately tell that the updated version of the Kia Picanto also has better noise insulation, because I want to get back to my previous talking point, and that's the engine revving. I said in the under the hood segment that you should not drop this engine under 1600 RPM, then you're under revving a car, and when you do slow turns in third gear, you oftentimes end up too low and the rev range in the car doesn't want to pull. Now in the pre-update versions of this car, this drivetrain option, you could really hear the drone when you're under revving an engine. It's if you have a bit of sense for technology, you know what I mean. When you're under revving an engine, you get a drone. But with the updates and changes to the noise insulation, that drone is hardly audible in the car. So even I, used to this drivetrain, has had it happen that I'm under revving the car because I'm driving in too high of a gear. And that brings me to the digital gauge cluster. You have a digital tachometer with a numerical readout. You really have to look at the tachometer to know what the engine speed is. And I'd much rather have a normal traditional physical tachometer, so that you can see from your peripheral view where the engine is at engine speed, and so you can downshift in time to get the engine in its power band. So let's do this in third gear just to show you. Any other car can do this in third gear. Now at 1400 RPM, I floor the accelerator, and it takes a little. Now it's 2500 RPM. And then she wants to move. So I do most of the acceleration in this car in third gear. I oftentimes skip fourth gear to get up to 80 kilometers an hour. But once you're there, life is all good. And all this is true for highway driving too. The important thing to know is that once you're up to speed, the car is capable of maintaining speed with ease. But if you want to accelerate, for instance, if you want to overtake slower traffic, especially on these regional roads we have right here, where you have a lot of tractors this time of year, you always have to downshift to fourth or even third gear from 80 kilometers an hour to overtake a tractor. And on a highway, you should be really cautious with overtaking, because the engine simply lacks power. But on a positive note, and that brings me back to the noise insulation of this car, the car is really capable of doing highway driving once it is at speed. Said it is really good at maintaining its speed, even in fifth gear, anything above 100 kilometers an hour. And the engine is quiet, and the noise level inside the car in the interior is real low. And that's the one surprising part about this car. It's noise insulation, and even with this low power output engine, it's a real good highway cruiser. But if you do a lot of highway driving and you live in a country where you have other engine options, I will highly recommend you get one of those engines. Another positive thing about the Kia Picanto, and that's true since this car was introduced, is the way it drives. It's a really well developed suspension, even though it's pretty simple. McPherson struts in the front, we have a torsion beam rear axle, but it has a very, I would say, grown up ride and handling. Ride and comfort is just good for a city car, so it's being a light car with a short wheelbase. The way it goes over speed bumps, there's a lot of suspension travel, does that really well. And if you end up on a highway, you will not only benefit from the good noise insulation, but the car is very stable, good straight line stability. And if you have any unevenness in the road, a crack, repairs in the road or expansion joints, the suspension stays very composed. Now we have to talk about steering too. The steering is calibrated for city driving, so it is fairly direct. There's a lot of power assist, so the steering is quite light and direct, ideal for maneuvering and doing a lot of tight turns and roundabouts. But it doesn't mean that the car is nervous on the highway. As said, straight line stability is great, and I think they found a nice overall balance for being a good city car and a nice car to drive on the highway. Of course, with electric power steering you don't have any feedback to speak of, but with the 16-inch wheels, and that's one of the plus sides of those larger wheels, is that the car corners really well. Said it's a light car, but you steer it into a corner and it immediately settles, and it's very precise to precision in corners, even at higher speeds. And if you do have the availability of the 1-liter turbocharged engine, this actually is a very fun car to drive on curvy roads. I want to head out to the highway and show a little bit of the acceleration of this car, see what it can do and what it can do. Okay, we're currently approaching the highway, and I wanted to talk about the driver aid system. This car does not have adaptive cruise control. Would be nice to have, but it is what it is. But what it does have is the lane keep assist and lane trace assist. I'm currently driving with the lane trace assist on, and that works really well, especially considering the class of vehicle and the price point of this car. Now over here it's not an not a cheap car, it's on the expensive side of things, with prices starting around 20,000 euros going up to 25,500 euros, but it works better in a lot of other cars that I've tested. So we're on the highway, and let's get up to speed a bit more. Shift it down to 4th gear. There is 100. I want to see if we can get to 120 kilometers an hour. I'm doing this in real time. And slowly, there's 120 kilometers an hour. So on GPS we would do just over 110 kilometers an hour, which is just fine, and set the cruise control. Now we do have a little bit of headwind. You can hear the wind noise over the A-pillars, but it's all not bad. The suspension is very quiet, the tires are very quiet in this car, and I said it has a very decent audio system. So yeah, it's not a bad thing to be on your way with on the highways. Pretty darn good. And what I also like is the ergonomics of this car. It may be not the widest of cars, but you do have a lot of headroom, a lot of adjustability in the driver's seat. The steering wheel is not telescoping, and so it only has height adjustment, but I find it very easy to find a good seating position. As said, the seats are supportive and fairly good, especially considering its price point. But the big positive is that you have a lot of room to move in this car. In the Picanto you have the gear shift lever on the floor, where in the i10 you have it up here on a little console, and having it on the floor has both positives and negatives. But one of the positives is that you have more room for your knee, so if you're a taller person, I think you're better off in the Kia Picanto instead of the i10. But anyway, I've touched upon all my talking points for the driving segment, so let's head out to the middle of nowhere, where I'll give you my final thoughts on the Kia Picanto in its updated version. See you in a second. Boy, it's windy out today. Anyway, I like the new front end design. New LED headlights really work well, and if you live in a rural area like I do, these LED headlights come in real handy, and the good thing is that they are available from second trim level. And even on the base trim level it has automatic high beams. I have a side note on that. The automatic high beams don't work too well. I leave them in manual mode. But anyway, I like the front end design. It completely fits in with the newer Kia models, even though this is a car from a whole different era. 8 years ago Kia had a different design language, but it fits in nicely, and I really think that the Picanto benefited from the redesign and the updates they've done to the car. Yeah, you may have gathered from this test that the engine is, well, the bare minimum that you need in a car. So if you live in a market where the 1-liter turbo or the 1.2 4-cylinder is available, I highly recommend you get that car, especially when you do highway driving on the regular. For us in the Netherlands, there is no other choice than this engine, and as I pointed out, my daily driver has the exact same drivetrain. I've done over 150,000 kilometers with that car, and on the regular I do 1,000 kilometers a week on the highway. It is doable. It isn't all that bad. And the biggest pro, the most important takeaway from this car is that it has a very mature ride and ride comfort. You can tell it's a light car and it's a fairly short car, but even on highway driving, when you do longer distances or when you spend hours and hours per day in your car, this isn't half bad. Plus you do get a modern car with a lot of creature comforts. There is a lot of safety equipment standard, and if you want all the safety equipment, you're better off with the highest trim level. My personal choice would be one of the mid-range trim level. From second trim level on, as said, you get these fantastic LED headlights, most of the creature comforts, but if you want things like climate control, heated seat, heated steering wheel, you need to opt for the third trim level. Now I am aware that the trim levels may vary per country, but in majority this is how the trim levels and the equipment are in most countries where the Kia Picanto is on sale. Anyway, that's it for this real-life car review. I hope you liked following me along, and if you did, please let me know by subscribing to my channel, give me a like, or if you have any questions or constructive feedback, let me know down below in the comment section. Also, if you want to support the channel, you can do so by buying me a coffee. I'll leave the link for that down below in the description box. For now, I would like to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye!